So when you first learn a language, especially in a traditional academic setting, you're handed this very clean, very logical toolkit, right?
Right. Yeah, it's perfectly organized.
Exactly. You memorize the vocabulary, you drill those rigid grammar rules, and you master proper sentence structures.
It's a bit like learning the physics of riding a bicycle while, sitting in a sterile classroom.
Yes. But then you get your first actual office job, and suddenly you are no longer in the classroom.
Not at all.
You are trying to ride that bicycle through the middle of rush hour traffic in Rome. You realize almost instantly that the modern workplace operates on this entirely separate, unwritten language.
It really is a profound environmental shift because you transition from textbook English, where the whole goal is just to convey information, to highly nuanced, highly strategic ecosystem.
Yeah, the literal definition of the words you use is, frankly, frequently secondary to the psychological impact of how you're deploying them.
Exactly. You are constantly managing risk, asserting status, negotiating boundaries, all of it.
And that is the exact machinery we are going to dismantle and examine for you today on this deep dive.
I'm really excited about this one.
Me too. We've gathered a fascinating stack of sources to help decode the unwritten rules of professional communication. We are pulling from business English guides, transcripts of highly specific office scenarios, and this massive, comprehensive database of workplace vocabulary.
And our mission here is to equip you with an understanding of the exact phrasing you need to, well, not just survive, but actively navigate the modern workplace.
Right. We're going to take you through a full day at the office. We'll look at how the micro-trust bill at the water cooler is the exact currency you eventually spend when you have to, aggressively disagree with your boss in the boardroom.
The through line connecting all these sources is how heavily structured our seemingly casual interactions actually are.
Yeah.
Whether you are navigating a hallway chat or an incredibly tense project negotiation, there is this invisible script at play.
So let's look at the very beginning of that script. The break room ballet.
Oh, the classic morning interactions.
Right. The transcripts in our sources capture those quintessential encounters that happen before the actual work begins. So we're starting our journey at the office coffee machine.
The center of it all.
Right. We have a dialogue between two colleagues, Amir and Jane. And reading this transcript, it is striking how completely devoid of substance the conversation is.
It really is.
Amir asks how Jane is. Jane asks how Amir is. Amir points out that the weather has been rainy,
Classic weather chat.
and Jane agrees, offers to loan him her umbrella for lunch. Then they briefly pivot to discussing a weekend movie, specifically Wonder Woman, and, confirm a 3:00 p.m. meeting.
Yeah.
On the surface, this is just agonizingly banal.
It seems banal, sure, if you're looking for an exchange of hard data.
Mhm.
But if you look at small talk as a sociological tool, it's actually highly complex.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Small talk is essentially a human ping mechanism.
A ping mechanism,
Right.
like with computers.
Exactly. When computers network, they send these tiny packets of data back and forth just to measure latency and ensure the connection is stable.
Yeah.
That is exactly what Amir and Jane are doing. They aren't actually exchanging information about precipitation or superhero movies. They are exchanging mutual assurances.
Like just checking the connection.
Right. They are signaling, I am a safe person, my mood is predictable today, and we share a baseline reality.
So it's essentially a low-stakes audit of your colleague's psychological state.
Precisely. You are establishing the micro-trust that becomes absolutely critical later in the day.
Right, because if Amir and Jane have to debate some contentious budget cut at 4:00 p.m., that debate is going to be much more productive because they established at 9:00 a.m. that they are allies who both hate the rain.
Yes, exactly. The micro-trust smooths over the macro conflict.
But, the break room isn't just about safe territory. Sometimes you bump into someone from a different department or maybe a new hire, and you walk right into what the sources describe as a major trap.
Ah, the what do you do question.
The dreaded trap.
Yeah.
You have about 15 seconds to validate your existence in the company without sounding either incredibly arrogant or mind-numbingly boring.
It's tough.
Yeah.
But our sources actually break down a structural formula to safely navigate this. It requires 3 distinct phases.
Okay, lay it out for us.
You start simple with your title and company. So, for example, I'm a marketing assistant at a tech company.
Simple enough.
Then you must use active transitive verbs, words like manage, coordinate, or oversee. And finally, you ground the entire description using frequency phrases.
Like what?
Like saying, on a typical day.
The frequency phrase is really interesting to me. Why is on a typical day the crucial pivot point there?
Because a job title is an abstract concept, right? Marketing assistant doesn't mean anything tangible to human survival.
Sure.
By saying, on a typical day, I manage our inventory levels and coordinate with suppliers, you drag your abstract title down into a spatial, temporal reality.
Oh, I see.
You force the listener to picture you actively doing something in the physical world.
There's a massive caveat to this in the sources, though. They emphasize this non-specialist rule.
Yes, this is huge.
The text provides a great example. If you work in tech, you should never tell someone in accounting, I analyze user data from web platforms to improve UX.
Because they'll just tune out.
Right. Instead, you translate it to, I study how people use our website so we can make it easier. But, okay, let's unpack this. I want to challenge this a bit.
Go for it.
To me, it feels like simplifying your job is actually much harder than using jargon, because jargon acts like a very comfortable shield. It's like armor you wear to prove you belong to an elite intellectual tribe.
Right.
If you strip all that away, aren't you leaving yourself incredibly vulnerable? Like you're pitching a movie to a studio executive and just hoping they get it.
I see what you mean, but I have to push back on the idea that jargon is primarily armor.
Okay.
Jargon is not always defensive. In its purest form, it is designed for extreme efficiency. Think of it like a ZIP file.
A ZIP file.
Yeah. If a software developer is talking to another software developer, they don't want to spend 20 minutes explaining the foundational architecture of a database. They just use the acronym. It is a dense, compressed package of information.
That makes sense.
The failure happens when you send that exact same ZIP file to a non-specialist, like the marketing team. They literally do not have the software to unpack the file.
So the issue isn't the jargon itself. It's a failure to read the environment and adjust the compression rate of your language.
Yes, exactly. Stripping away the jargon does require a certain confidence, because you have to truly understand the underlying value of your own work to explain it simply to an outsider.
Which is hard.
It is. But if you can do that, you build vital cross-departmental bridges. In fact, if you've been isolated from your broader team, maybe you've been working remotely for a long stretch, our idiom sources know that you really need to make up for lost time.
Make up for lost time, meaning doing something as much as possible to catch up.
Exactly. You have to deliberately seek out these casual, translated interactions to rebuild your network presence.
All right, so you spend the morning translating your ZIP files, establishing your baseline reality, and building up this reservoir of microtrust.
Yep.
But eventually, you have to cash that trust in. You have to step into the conference room crucible.
The real test.
This is where the language in our sources shifts dramatically from relationship building to operational efficiency and power dynamics.
The environment completely changes. The etiquette of setting up these meetings is entirely about clarifying logistics up front, like deciding between a 10:00 a.m. physical meeting tomorrow or an online call.
Right.
But the real linguistic gymnastics happen once the call actually begins.
We have this transcript from the sources of a conference call led by someone named Cassandra, the CFO.
Yes, this is a fascinating example.
She opens the call by saying, "Hi, everyone. This is Cassandra Stone. I'm the CFO, and I'm joined by Mark, our CEO, and Kendra, our VP of Sales. Please introduce yourself and state your position."
Very direct.
It's an incredibly rigid, almost militaristic way to open a conversation.
It is rigid, but you have to understand, it's architecturally necessary for the medium.
How so?
Well, in a physical boardroom, power dynamics are mapped out visually. You instinctively know who holds the authority based on who sits at the head of the table, who takes up the most physical space.
Who commands the eye contact of the room, right?
Exactly. But a digital conference call is a sensory void. Cassandra is using language to manually draw a map of the room's hierarchy.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Demanding that participants state your position isn't just about identifying voices. It is about making everyone vocally submit to the structure of the call before any actual business is discussed.
Wow. But, even with a strict hierarchy, communication breaks down. The financial data gets too dense, or someone's microphone cuts out.
Happens all the time.
How do you handle confusion in that high-stakes environment without looking incompetent?
The text provides a very specific script for this. If you miss something, you don't pretend to understand. You wait for a clear pause. You never interrupt the flow of power, and you say, "Sorry, I didn't catch that last part. Would you mind repeating yourself?"
It's verbal judo. Would you mind repeating yourself?
Yeah, it really is.
It places the burden of clarity entirely on the speaker, but does so by framing it as a polite request for a favor. You weren't accusing them of being confusing, which would trigger defensiveness.
Exactly. You are preserving their status while demanding the necessary information.
Which brings us to the most fascinating and, frankly, terrifying part of the conference room transcripts. The language of pushback.
Oh, the negotiations.
How do you tell your boss or your project lead that their timeline is just a complete disaster without getting fired?
You deploy highly structured, formalized disagreement.
Give me an example.
In one of the transcripts, a project lead asks for thoughts on a product launch deadline. A colleague suggests pushing the date back. The project lead does not just say no. They respond, "I respectfully disagree with you there. The priority is to launch before the holidays, so we don't want to move this deadline."
Notice the syntax. I respectfully disagree with you there.
Yeah, that one word.
That word there isolates the disagreement to a single, specific logistical point. It separates the terrible idea from the identity of the person who suggested it.
And the negotiation doesn't stop. The colleague pivots and says, "Okay, then maybe you should simplify the plan a bit." Instead of fighting over the date, they negotiate the scope of the work.
We see the exact same mechanics in another dialogue where an employee has to tell their boss they just cannot meet a deadline for a major presentation.
Right.
They don't just present a brick wall by saying, "I can't do it." They offer an alternative condition. They suggest pausing their work on the Archibald Company account so they can ensure the Acme Cord deadline is met.
They force the manager to acknowledge the physical limitations of time by trading priorities.
And we see this externally too, right? Like with clients.
Yeah.
A client pushes for a 15% rate cut. The sales rep replies, "While our rates reflect the quality of service, we can offer a 10% discount for long-term contracts."
Validate the underlying premise, offer a concession, but tie it to a new condition.
It is a highly deliberate, highly calculated dance.
Absolutely.
But here's where it gets really interesting. I have to ask you about this dance. Listening to these transcripts, it feels like we are wrapping every single conflict in layers of bubble wrap.
It does feel that way sometimes.
Do these highly formalized, polite phrases actually help solve problems, or do they just prevent people from saying what they really mean? Like, doesn't "I respectfully disagree with you there" just slow down the reality that the project is doomed?
That is a super common frustration, but the formality serves a vital biological purpose.
Biological.
Yeah. If you walk into a room and say, "Your timeline is a disaster," the other person's amygdala immediately registers a threat.
Ah, the brain's alarm system.
Exactly. Their brain goes into a fight or flight state. When ego and defensiveness take over, complex problem solving shuts down completely.
Right?
These formal phrases exist to absorb the emotional impact of the truth. You are intentionally slowing down the emotional reaction so that the logical, strategic part of the brain has time to engage and actually solve the problem.
So you are basically de-escalating the ego to save the project.
Yes. However, the text also acknowledges that there are limits to this.
Oh.
When the polite dance goes on too long, a project is stalling out, and the room is just spinning its wheels, you have to shift your language. To pull from the idiom sources, there comes a moment when a leader has to take the bull by the horns, meaning to deal decisively with a difficult situation, and finally tell the team it is time to get cracking.
Get cracking, getting started on a task.
Exactly.
Which perfectly sets up the final phase of the workday,
Yeah.
the aftermath.
The execution.
Right. The meeting is over, the Archibald project is paused, the Acme deadline is confirmed, and the decisions are finalized. Now it's time to evaluate the performance and actually do the heavy lifting.
And as we transition out of the boardroom, the language shifts again. It becomes much more evaluative and, interestingly, much more visceral.
Let's look at the evaluation part first. We pull an example from the sources of a manager delivering feedback to an employee named Sarah following a presentation. How is that conversation architected?
It follows a classic, deeply effective structure designed once again to bypass the brain's threat detection. First, the manager validates her effort. "Overall, it was great. Your data was well researched."
You establish the baseline that her job is safe and her work has value.
Right. Then the manager isolates the specific issue, phrasing it as an external observation rather than a personal flaw. I noticed the audience seemed a bit disengaged toward the end.
Notice that the focus is on the audience's reaction, not Sarah's failure to entertain them.
Exactly. And finally, the manager offers an actionable solution. Maybe next time, try incorporating more visuals. Validate the person, isolate the behavior, provide the solution.
It's a great formula. But once the feedback is absorbed, the actual grinding work
Right.
has to happen. And this is where the material gets truly fascinating.
The idioms.
Yes. The text from English Like a Native provides a massive database of idioms specifically dedicated to describing professional effort. And what stands out to me is how intensely physical and honestly often violent the English language gets when people are stressed out at their desks.
It's true. The lexicon of extreme effort is almost entirely rooted in physical pain and industrial labor.
Let's analyze a few of these. When you have too much administrative work, you aren't just busy. The idiom is that you are snowed under.
Right.
The source uses the example of a teacher who misses a staff meeting because exams are approaching and multiple colleagues are self-isolating, leaving them completely snowed under. It evokes this imagery of a natural disaster, an avalanche of paperwork that you're physically trapped beneath.
And when a bureaucratic procedure is needlessly complicated, you aren't just following rules, you are jumping through hoops.
Oh, yeah.
The text uses the example of applying for a mortgage. It reduces the professional adult to a circus animal performing these elaborate, exhausting tricks just to reach a basic end goal.
And when it is time to ignore the distractions and focus, you are told to knuckle down. Or, my personal favorite, put your nose to the grindstone.
That one is so vivid.
We use that phrase so casually, but putting your face against a spinning, abrasive stone used for sharpening metal is a horrific image.
It really is. It's an artifact of the Industrial Revolution. We are relying on the ghosts of physical, manual labor to validate our modern intellectual work.
The sources do contrast these idioms of suffering with idioms of success, though.
They do.
If the outcomes are good, you are on a roll. The example provided is a business signing 2 clients one week for the next and having 3 more in the pipeline. Momentum is carrying you forward.
Or you are raising the bar, much like Apple did with the initial release of the iPhone, setting a new, elevated standard that the competition now has to physically jump over.
But the physical metaphors return instantly when dealing with underperformance. There is a dialogue where an employee named James has been taking excessive time off. His team warns him that he needs to pull his own weight or face termination.
Pull his own weight, meaning to do his fair share.
Right. It is a direct reference to rowing a boat. If you drop your oar and stop pulling, you become literal dead weight that the rest of the crew has to drag through the water.
This is a harsh warning.
This leads me to a major question about the psychology of our workplaces. I look at phrases from the text like blood, sweat, and tears, or the cliche of being told to give it 110%, or no pain, no gain.
Oh, yeah. All the classics.
There's even a vivid example in the text about a manager burning the candle at both ends, and the example literally ends with that boss suffering a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, that's a dark example.
Are we just using these archaic, catchy phrases to romanticize total burnout? Does the language we use trick us into believing that suffering is a mandatory business strategy?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're hitting on a profound psychological truth about corporate culture. These idioms reveal that in many environments, we value the visible performance of struggle just as much, if not more, than we value the actual outcome.
So it's not enough to just efficiently complete the task. You have to visibly look like you are suffering while doing it.
Exactly. Stating that you are snowed under or burning the candle at both ends often functions as a badge of honor. It is a linguistic signal to the tribe that you are fully dedicated to the collective survival.
Wow.
The danger here is that language inevitably shapes our reality. If the only vocabulary we possess to describe success involves blood, sweat, and tears, we begin to subconsciously believe that a project isn't truly valuable unless it physically or mentally exhausted us.
We confuse the friction of the grindstone with the actual sharpness of the blade we are trying to create.
That's a great way to put it. We fetishize the friction. We praise the sheer amount of effort rather than evaluating the efficiency of the process or the quality of the final product.
So what does this mean for you, navigating your own career? We've traced the invisible architecture of the workday today. We started at the coffee machine, realizing that chatting about the weather and weekend movies is actually a sophisticated mechanism for establishing micro-trust and a baseline reality.
Right.
We moved into the boardroom and unpacked how to translate jargon for non-specialists, how to navigate the audible hierarchies of a conference call, and how to use verbal judo to respectfully disagree without triggering a fight-or-flight response.
De-escalating the amygdala.
Exactly. We looked at the clinical architecture of giving constructive feedback without attacking someone's identity. And finally, we dismantled the intense, historically violent idioms we use to prove to each other that we were putting our noses to the grindstone.
You now have a deeper understanding of the scripts running beneath the surface of your daily interactions. You understand not just what your colleagues are saying, but the sociological and psychological machinery driving why they're saying it.
But before you log off and head back to your inbox, we want to leave you with one final concept to mull over.
Yeah, think about the massive shift happening in how we work right now. Our professional language today is still completely dominated by physical, industrial metaphors. Grindstones, sweat, heavy lifting, pulling weight, moving mountains.
Yeah.
But as you step into an increasingly digital, remote, and AI-driven workplace, a reality where the actual heavy lifting and grinding is being executed silently by server farms thousands of miles away, how will our language have to evolve?
That's fascinating.
10 years from now, what new idioms will we invent to prove to our peers that we are working hard when we might never even need to leave our ergonomic computer chairs?
It is a wild paradox. How exactly do you prove you are pulling your weight when an algorithm is the one holding the oar? We will have to watch the language evolve and find out. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden language of the office. Go out there, deploy your new vocabulary, translate your ZIP files, and try to go the extra mile in your next interaction. Just try to avoid burning the candle at both ends while you do it. Keep swimming, and we will see you next time.